So here you have, a pretty important point. The sons of light were trying to get man, or trying to get this soul who was trapped in an animal and trapped in this law of cause and effect to understand what was going on and get out. But they did it by example and persuasion. They couldn't do it by force. And yet, to this very day, you have human men who try, men and women, of course, mankind trying to impose their will on others who are souls, who have free will. And, of course, what they're talking about when they say they can't get away with it, but that's for later, that's for Book 5, if I'm ever allowed to write it. And they go on. The sons of light, with the hierarchy, petitioned Father for help. The result of that petition was the bending of the law of cause and effect, and a new law took its place. This new law dealt with the souls and incarnation in the earth experience only. All other creatures would remain under the old law. No longer would the soul become a cyclops or a mermaid. The unicorn and the troll would become the beasts of the earth again, with only genetic and emotions to guide their path. No longer was the soul able to help them turn the tide of battle or slow their prey. Many great creatures would soon perish from the face of the earth, no longer able to compete. Their partners in life, the soul, who gave them their cunning and intelligence, must now leave them forever. Because of the petitioning and the change in the law of cause and effect, these trapped souls were now to incarnate exclusively into an obscure and most ridiculous little monkey. Now here, I don't understand why they, and I said this later too, I don't understand why they mentioned cyclops and mermaids or unicorns and trolls, but they're indicating that at that time that's what they were incarnating in, and because this law was changed, they were no longer able to just pick any animal they wanted to and incarnate into it. They were locked into a specific animal, and that specific animal was a most obscure and ridiculous little monkey. You can kind of see that the monkey they're talking about is man. And so they go on and give you the reason for that change. The reason was obvious only if you look at the problem from the view that we have been presenting here. This little monkey had two traits that made it the proper choice for the trapped soul. First, it had the least passion, or was influenced by the emotional passions of animals the least of all the creatures in all areas of activity. This would give the trapped soul a better chance to free himself from earth attachment. It would also allow him to progress on the planned path with the least amount of emotional interference. Secondly, this little monkey had the greatest capacity of all the creatures to develop intelligence. Intelligence was the key, and they want to explain, not the answer, the key, to bringing the soul to the realization of what it was, even in its mired and muddled state. Now that the soul must incarnate into the monkey, and they explain that it would soon become man as we know him today, which I kind of told you. And they say, now that the soul must incarnate into the monkey, the traits that gave it the thrill of life became its bane. Strength, size, power, brutality, and the ability to fight had given way to the ability to run, hide, think, and cooperate. The soul combination with this monkey must now survive in a new way. There were many deaths before this lesson was learned. This monkey was straightened, cleaned, dehaired, and made more symmetrical as part of the new rules. The brute was transformed into man, and here they bracket Adam and Eve, and man was removed from the garden of pleasure unbounded. Now man would learn of good and evil. And here in the book, it breaks off from the narration, and I'm kind of allowed to, what would you say, put my 2 cents worth in. So I'll read what my 2 cents was at the end of this part. And I said, now there's a mouthful bite off. The religious arguments alone could fill a book. They just told us how the souls were created, why they were created, how they arrived here on earth, and how man as we know him today came about. Does this help explain creation, Genesis, mythology, legend, or does it refute same? Why do you suppose they chose to mention mermaids and cyclops and the unicorn? None of what was presented here is provable, since it deals with something in the very distant past. We have never found the remains of any of these creatures of legend, and the scientific community will surely use that fact as a basis for ridicule. Why couldn't they, and again we were talking about the they who actually gave this information, why couldn't they just have slipped past that part and not mentioned it? When asked that very question, they said, and now we're quoting from them, if a part of that presented here is thought to be false and later proven true, perhaps the reader will examine the rest with more care. What did they say? They said that, what did they say? I think they said that we're going to, at some point in time, prove that there were mermaids and cyclops and unicorns. And when they do find that there were, won't they take these books more seriously? And then I went on. I also asked things like, why did the four pillars have to rotate counterclockwise? And the answer, which I have become very accustomed to, is, and here they're being quoted, there are those who know some of the truth and must see it here as a piece fitting into the total puzzle. And I mentioned the fact that I had said before, those who know. Remember me saying those who know. And the truth in this instance is that creation is always counterclockwise. For those who know what that means, great. For the rest of us, we just have to accept it or reject the concept, or just wonder what. And I'll tell you, we will wonder what those who know read. What do they read? How do they know? Going on, I say, I have run across the Sons of Light and the White Brotherhood in my readings. I can even handle Michael as a possibility. But who or what are the higher powers and the hierarchy? Again, they suggest that those who know. Okay, I guess that's that. And here, I might point out that what they said was, those who know this stuff that we don't know, need to have it in written form so they can say, oh, okay, these who are presenting this work know that. The things that we don't know. Higher powers, hierarchy, I don't think I've ever heard of them, but they're saying that those who do, or who have heard of them and know what they are, need to have it written here so that they can see that we who are presenting this do know about higher powers and do know about the hierarchy. So I don't know if they're ever going to explain it, but at least they're saying, they're giving you a reason why they even mentioned it. Those who know these things want to have it here so that they can say, okay, that we that are presenting this information are giving us stuff that nobody else knows. We better pay attention to them. And then I go on discussing what we have just read. What of the philosophy you could build on what was just presented here? Imagine what this does to our concept of who we are and why we are here. If we are truly souls trapped in a monkey body just because we can't put down the toys of this place, what does that say for us? Or to us, for that matter? I don't know about you, but it says to me that we need to understand more about this concept. It also says that we need to formulate a plan that will allow our souls to escape this earth. Let's go on and see what more they can give. And the going on is the next part of Book 1. And the part is titled The History of Man. And I go on reading what they gave. We now have man here on earth trapped and wandering around like a monkey. His history is all but lost to modern man, save this last chapter and some of the legends and lore. There are only a small few who know the complete history, and it is to be hidden from man for a time yet. Still, for our purposes, what we do know of history is sufficient. Man is aware of being a baby monkey. He will grow to adulthood if he's lucky. He lives his life working out the problems he encounters with little knowledge of what he is and what he must do to get where he is to go. Through all this blundering, he gets little help from his fellow man. His fellow man knows little more than he, but does delight in solving his problems rather than working on their own. Is that all the help we get then? Is man to make little progress here and thus be doomed to an eternity of life here on earth as a man? Is there more? The answer is yes. To better understand, we will give you an overview of how man has been given the information he needs to determine why he is here and what he is to do. And this overview starts with a discussion of the distortions of information that are given to man. And they say, let's step away from the information handed down to man from the past and look at it from a distance. As you look, you begin to see that there are two distortions in the information given to man that change the meaning of most everything. First, there is the distortion caused by the fact that man as a race is becoming more intelligent as time passes. Now, some might argue this statement, but it's true all the same. Knowing this, you can see that what was told to people in an earlier time was all they could comprehend at that time. As man grew in intelligence, more could be given him in the way of truth. The distortion comes when history is looked at without the understanding that man is growing. When history is viewed without that understanding, what is taught a child race, so to speak, is mistakenly put together with our most recent teachings, and man is told to follow both as if they were the same teaching. Without the understanding that one was for a younger people, man is left confused with the resultant contradiction. The second distortion comes from the activities of man himself. He is still bound and determined to control others and win the contests of man. He wants things his way, and when he gets them his way, he wants to keep them that way. Any new truth found by man in any age will, if accepted, cause change to take place for those in power at the time. So, truth, new found, is resisted. And if resistance doesn't work, truth is changed. The changes were minor and harmless enough to distort history to the extent that even the most learned man didn't understand what really happened in the past. And when they said the changes were minor and harmless, they kind of quoted minor and harmless. They said when the changes were minor and harmless enough, and if they were minor and harmless enough to distort history to the extent that even the most learned men don't understand what really happened, I guess you could probably say they weren't very minor and they weren't very harmless. Kind of their form of humor. And then they go on and say, the only thing that keeps man on the right path is the fact that those who become the prophets of their time get their information not from history, but rather from an undistorted source. Having neither the time nor space to cover all the distortions in existence, we hope that you will understand that when what is presented here doesn't agree with what you have been taught, that perhaps it was because of these distorted sources. One thing you want to notice here is they did say that the only thing that keeps man on the right path is the fact that there are prophets. And those prophets do not get their history or their information from history, but rather from an undistorted source. They're again sliding something in kind of quietly and with not too much fanfare, but extremely important. The only thing that keeps man on the right path are the prophets, and that is because they don't use distorted history. They get their information from an undistorted source. That said, and then they go on, they say, that said, we will go on with the horrendous task of putting together the truth from the bits and pieces left. Rather than tackle the whole, we will focus on the misinformation that affects man in a negative way. And they say negative way in relation to his progress here. Focus on the misinformation that affects man in a negative way first, and try not to go too far astray. Those things that are in error are legion and must be dealt with piece by piece as we go along. We will get to the important ones, but in our chosen order. Accepting that, we begin with the area that is so distorted that man doesn't even have a clue. Half-truths, misinformation, and everything else abound here. Yet this is an area that man has the greatest need to understand. The area of discussion is death, and as you might imagine, it is very complex. To help you get through this complexity, we will mark for you the degrees or levels of difficulty so that you can choose what to read. We will use 3 levels, sometimes 4, they actually use, each deeper than the last. For example, level 1, level 2, level 3, and so on. As you come to this annotation, and I'll tell you what level that they're explaining these things on, you may choose to read them or not. If not, it won't affect the final outcome. Say that you must go on faith that what we suggested in those parts are true. Some can do this, and some will have to read to the very depths of this writing and still want more. Our purpose is to furnish you with the understanding, a guiding path with signs, if you will, and you will get there if you read only level 1 material. And what they're saying then is, I assume if you have faith and you only read level 1 material, you'd get there. If you're one of these people that has to have every single detail, you're going to read all the levels, including 4, and dig for the understanding. It's kind of my way, and believe me, you have to dig for the understanding and reread it and find things between the lines and reread it and find new things and reread it, and it seems to be almost a never-ending battle, but they're going to start talking about death, and they're going to get pretty technical, so they go on. And what they say is, first we will define terms, and the first term is persona. And the persona, they say, is the sum total of all the lives the soul has experienced since its arrival here on earth. The persona is a record in which your experiences since arrival have been recorded in minutest detail. It is also a record in the form of accumulated experiences all piled into one personality, like having many people in one person's head. The persona is a thing that would allow a person to be recognized as someone you know, even if that person had died and come back a month later in a different body. Now, do you understand that? That was kind of as close to a definition as you can get there. If you knew somebody well, you had a really good friend, and that really good friend died, and somebody came to you a month later, and you got to know them pretty well, that part that is the persona would be recognizable, and you would say, man, you're familiar. Boy, you're so familiar. I'm not saying that happened, but they're trying to get across to you that something survives after death, and that something is the persona, or at least that's the definition of that thing that they will describe as the persona. And so they go to level 2 now, and they give you the definition of persona again in level 2. And the definition is, man has lived his life in whatever fashion, and then he dies. The monkey body is dead, and the conscious mind dies with it. Still, something goes on. What is that something? Much of us is left to go on to other realms. What other realms? Well, first we will call that something that goes on persona, just because it has to be called something. A light definition was given above. This persona is a record and has awareness that goes on after death. The persona will be changed from life to life by the experiences each life has to offer and other experiences after death. As the persona develops and learns, it will not only be influenced by its experiences, but will begin to influence each new life it passes through. This influence will be in the form of hunches and urges from the subconscious that move us so subtly. It is the persona that develops and changes, not the soul. The thing that we are working with is the persona. It is influenced by our actions. It learns the ways of this earth. It is a thing that loses its attraction to the earth and is finally freed. As that freedom occurs, so does the soul again gain back its awareness, and it awakens to go on to other places. And they explain probably goes back to the throne of Father, giving time away, and the sorely needed love that it's going to go there to get. So then it goes on to the definition of the soul. And it says the soul is too, and they're defining the soul in level 1 here. The soul is too awesome a thing to even imagine. Since the persona is that which we are working with to gain release from the earth influence, the definition becomes irrelevant here at level 2. They talk about the soul. The soul, as so often stated in religion, is perfect and never sins. That leaves so many of the religious people confused, since they have been taught that something is being changed by all their good deeds and piety. We will surely get to this total misconception of how things work in Book 5. But for now, suffice it to say that the persona is what is being changed. The soul, on the other hand, is much too complicated and awesome even for this work. Let's say that the soul's awareness is what is trapped here. Let's say that this awareness becomes a persona as it gains experience. The soul may have generated one or a number of different personas, or soulmates as they would be called. That is where the somewhat erroneous term oversoul came from, being a soul responsible for the creation of more than one persona. These personas could be here on earth, dead, working in other planes of existence, older, younger than you, a different sex, or the same, or you may not even have one. And here I insert kind of a statement, which I said, my experience would indicate that you not look for a soulmate with the expectations given in the romance novel. A soulmate and a helpmate more suited to your needs are often two very different things. And then they go on and say, as you can see, it gets real complicated isn't terribly relevant, since you can barely influence the persona in your day-to-day experiences, much less try to have an effect on the soul. And so they're saying both in level 1 and in level 2 that the definition of the soul is kind of irrelevant, because you're not going to have any influence on the soul. It's the persona that you're going to influence, if anything at all. And then they go on to the definition of the subconscious. Level 1. The subconscious is that part of the mind activities which you are not aware of, but affect you by creating certain emotions that you may respond to. What you need to know is that the subconscious can and does affect you and your life profoundly. And then subconscious level 2. We will be discussing the subconscious and, in fact, the complete process of the mind in Book 2. Most of that discussion will be at level 3. Therefore, we will discuss only that part of the subconscious that relates to the topic at hand. And in this case, in case you've forgotten what the topic was, it's death. And they say, we will get there, be patient. And then they go to, they're still discussing the subconscious, and they're saying, the mind is the creator. The mind here referred to is the conscious mind, the one that you're aware of thinking with. The mind creates all manner of things in all manner of ways. The way this is accomplished isn't relevant at this point in the discussion, but the fact that the mind creates is. Once the mind has created an idea or wish, it passes it to the subconscious to be manifested or brought to fruition. The thought can be as simple as I am hungry, or it can be as complicated as a complete life thought out and created. To understand then how the subconscious takes these ideas and manifests them, we must know more about the subconscious. And then they go to level 3. And they say, in level 3, they say, for those who know, it is understood that a thought creation must pass through the subconscious to the place of balance and judgment, unless the process of enlightenment has been accomplished. Still, for the purpose of this discussion, it can be said to go to the subconscious and there be processed, since the result will be the same to those who don't know. To go on, then, the subconscious doesn't recognize that time exists. The best way to explain this concept of time is to ask those who remember your dreams to think about them now. In your dreams, time doesn't exist. You move from one scene to another with no thought of time. The timing of things is a jumble and not in sequence. As you remember what it is like in your dreams, you come very close to living as if time didn't exist. That is the way your subconscious perceives time. For those who can't remember your dreams, and they want you to understand, they say, and if you knew the magic window dreams open for you, you would remember them. And they say, for those of you who can't remember your dreams, you will have to use your imagination. Here again, they stick this little thing in. They say, and if you knew the magic window dreams open for you, you would remember your dreams. So for those of you who don't remember your dreams, you're missing out. See that subtle little piece of information you jot down on a tablet because they won't let you stop and think about it? You're going to have to use your imagination if you can't remember your dreams. But boy, you really should remember your dreams because that opens a magic window for you. For those of you who can remember your dreams, does it seem a magic window? Maybe you're not, maybe you haven't done enough research. Maybe you haven't studied dreams enough. Personally, I have. Personally, I agree. It is a magic, it's an awesome, magic, wonderful window into what's going on in your life. You cannot believe the things that you can learn from your dreams. A focus, well worth your investigation. Jot it down on the tablet, think about it, work on it, get books on it, find out how to interpret your dreams, find out how to remember your dreams, how to write your dreams down, how to wake up and get them transferred to something you remember, because you know when you wake up in the middle of the night, some of the things that you remember, if you remember your dreams, are pretty awesome, but by morning they're gone, and you need to have a way to transfer them instantly to hard copy, if you will, so that you can begin translating them and learning the language of dreams. Just something to think about, something to work on, a focus. And they go on. Since time doesn't exist for the subconscious, a thought creation is manifested by the subconscious when all the components of the manifestation are ready and it is safe to have the manifestation occur. That means it doesn't happen when you want it to happen necessarily. In fact, you will attest to the fact that it rarely manifests when you want it to. And if you don't want it to manifest, in other words, if you had a thought and you don't want it to manifest, well, you can make book on the fact that it will, or that's the way it seems. You may wish for a thing to happen tomorrow and it doesn't. That becomes proof to you that you can never count on your wishes coming true. In truth, all your wishes come true, just not when you want them to come true. The reason, or part of the reason, the subconscious, who's in charge of making your wishes come true, doesn't recognize that time exists. That means that any time is the same as a specific time. Secondly, and to make matters even worse, the subconscious doesn't recognize our conscious reality as the only reality. Think about that. The subconscious holds that other realities are as real as the ones we think of as the only reality. It, therefore, can manifest a wish in other realities it recognizes as being real, as well as manifesting them in our reality. It can be seen then that a thing that we want to have happen at a given time may not only not happen in that time, but it may not even happen in what we consider our reality. The subconscious then may manifest a given thought creation at a wished-for time or some other time when it is more beneficial for the person. It may also manifest the thought creation in a reality other than the reality that we consider our reality. Now, why is all this important? And the answer is because there is a system or method that is used to determine when and where a wish may best be or most safely be manifested. Man, the monkey wants everything now. The subconscious sees it a different way. And they go on. There are 3 other realities besides ours that are used for the manifestation of a wish or thought. These 3 are not found in what we consider reality and are used as safety valves for our thoughts and wishes. The first of these 3 is daydreaming. It is a harmless place for the subconscious to dump those wishes that are not so urgent and only somewhat harmful. When daydreaming is completed, the subconscious has fulfilled its duty and the wish or thought is considered to have been manifested. And here they explain how many possibilities of life have been literally daydreamed away. Could this explain why those who sit around daydreaming rarely get anything done? Do you know the difference between thinking a thing through and to evolve its details like visualizing, and do you know the difference between that and daydreaming? Consider this as a pointing out or a focus to you. Use this concept as homework if you are prone to daydreaming. And here they are again using that thing that we talked about right in the beginning, which was the focus, helping you to throw away those things that are irrelevant and really get down to the important. What did they say? The subconscious can manifest wishes in other realities. One of those realities is daydreaming. If you're a daydreamer, you may be daydreaming all of your this reality possibilities away. That's what they said. And that was the first reality, daydreaming. Then they go on and say the second reality, sleeping dreams, is where the subconscious manifests the more dangerous and urgent wishes. Here, as in daydreaming, the subconscious considers the wish to have been manifested and its duty done when the dream is finished. Of course, not all dreams are of this type, but many are. To those who remember their dreams, this fact should explain the many dreams which, had they been fulfilled in reality, would have caused all manner of complications. Now, I know you know what they're talking about as you remember dreams. You can see that what they're saying is that if some of the things that you dreamt happened in real life, big time trouble. So they're dumped in dreams, and they're considered fulfilled, and, if you didn't have so many of those thoughts, you wouldn't have so many of those dreams. Something like that. The third reality, and now they go on, the third reality for the subconscious, and the reason for this whole discussion is the thing that happens after death. And they say, remember, we were talking about death? And they go on, man is half monkey, and the monkey is truly going to die at death. The only thing left after death for the monkey is the memories others held of him in whatever form. The monkey part is dead and gone. The monkey does not go on in any form. The monkey, therefore, often wants to stay here and go on with its life. This fear of death and the consequential grip on life causes persons to think up and wish for many things which could never be fulfilled here in the time allotted. That leaves all the remaining thoughts and wishes to be fulfilled after death. Hold this understanding of the subconscious and the processes of manifesting the thought creations in your mind as we go on with the steps of death. When we get to step 3 in these steps of death, all of this that we've been talking about will become much clearer. And so then they go on and say, now we're going to talk about the steps of death. And they say, we'll now go on with an explanation of death by breaking it down into 6 steps. As you will soon see, our discussion of death has no traditional heaven nor hell, no purgatory, no sleeping until the rapture, no return of the Christ to rise up the select few. We will just report the facts. The discussion on religion in Book 5, if it's ever written, might help you bring our understanding of death into line with your religion, or maybe not. Also try to remember that the development of the persona and the expectation of the person who is dying will have a direct effect on which steps he will go through and how long or extensive each step will be. And so they move to step 1. And at step 1 they say, at death a person's first experience is the review of his life, or as we have heard so many times, my life flashed before my eyes. When the review is completed and the person is truly to die, the awareness moves from the conscious state to the subconscious state, or the dream state might be closer. And then we go to step 2. There are 2 less developed groups that will fall into this step. In other words, there are 2 groups that will fall into this step. They have little knowledge of the process of death. The first group has a strong attachment to earth life. They will try to stay in Earth's influence even after death, hovering around those they once knew, trying to get them to notice their existence. They will frequent old haunts and tarry long. They will not understand why no one recognizes them nor responds to their presence. To understand this problem better, you must know that they are at death in the subconscious or dream state. They can see, move, talk, hear, and all that, but they can't initiate anything. They have no will, but are simply where they are and flow to where they are attracted.